Angelique, and welcome back to our continuing series on QCT6 support. We're going to continue to work in QCT6 Pro, continuing on in PatternCAD. In a previous video, I did show you some of the features of PatternCAD, including how to do the draw and edit features. So if you haven't watched that video, please check that one out first, because we are going to be using some of those skills in this video. In this video, we're going to start with looking at how to take a design that we created and turn it into a pantograph. So to get started, we are going to be working in simulation mode, so feel free to grab your tablet or computer and follow along with me. So down here, we have the preview button. And one of the first things it's going to show me is that if this is a pantograph, it is not a continuous design. And I can see that because I have this looped around like this, it can't continue from one to the next to create the pantograph. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit my design a little bit to make it a little bit easier for it to do that. So there's a couple things I could do. I could wrap this around if I really wanted kind of the swivel there. But just for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight these and delete out some of the extras, all right? I can go back to preview and take a look and again see I don't have that continuity. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Tools and I'm going to go to Endpoint Continuity, and then what that does is it splits my screen in a sense, all right? This one here in the center that you see the nodes, this is the live one. This is the one I can edit and work on to try to connect my start and my stop points. The other two are not editable, right? They're there to help guide you where these green lines are in trying to make those connections, all right? So I'm going to go back to draw, and I want to be able to connect to this one here. But I might want a little bit more of a space between the end of the E and the beginning of the L. So I can start over here doing some additional drawing, okay? Because I created a continuous design, this is where I want to not do continuous because I don't want it to continue from the left side. I uncheck the continuous, and now I can just kind of do some turns here if I wanted to, and I don't really love that, so remember our undo. And then maybe I can just get a little bit of space coming out that way. And I could kind of live with that, but can you see how I have, because again, it's not continuous. See that little space I have there? That's going to be a problem in my design. So I'm going to click on the node so I can see it. Maybe zoom this in a little bit more, using these arrows so I can see. I'm going to highlight those two nodes, and again I'm going to snap those together so that I can have my continued design, since I had to do it without the endpoint continuity, all right? So we'll go back to fit here, and if I want to worry about smoothing some of this stuff out, I can, just like I did before. All right, so I've kind of created a little bit difference in my design here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to worry about this on this side as well. So I'm going to show you, I did some drawing over here, right? I'm going to put the continuous on just to kind of show you what can happen. So, oh, do you see how it created this big long line? The continuous is going to go from the last node I drew. And the last node I drew was over on the left-hand side. So that's why I'm going to, again, still not use the continuous, right? So I'm going to uncheck that. And I want to get this to come up a little bit closer to this line here. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit. Again, I have that space, so highlight those two nodes, snap that selected, smooth it out if I want to, and I should be a little bit closer to continuous. I'm going to go ahead and preview again. Clearly not going to be continuous because of the way that I've drawn this, so I am going to also have to change my starting and stopping. So what I'm going to do before I try to get this perfect is I'm going to go into the optimization screen here. So I'm going to click on the optimize, and because I kind of have all these like funky ways that I was drawing it, I need to kind of fix some of this before I can really get that continuity. And so you're going to see in this screen that there are some numbers, there are some green and red dots. Again, red is a stopping point, green is a starting point, and then you're going to see these more aqua teal colors with the dots here. These are trim lines where I'm going to have to cut these later. So I'm going to play with it a little bit in here to see if I can get this stuff to switch around in such a way that I don't have the issue that I had before, and then I can save the design again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. So let's just kind of go over some of these features since we're in this screen anyway, and I'm going to show you that I can get rid of all of the numbers, but it doesn't mean they're not there. They are there. It just allows me to go through them with the arrows one at a time, what the different sections are, and kind of highlights those. So you can see it's a little bit darker around that E that it has marked as number 3. So that's what that does. When I check it back, it gives me the whole layout of how I've confused the program to do the stitching. I can turn on or off the trim lines with the checkbox, very similar to the original screen. I can remove all. Now, you have to be careful with remove all, because remove all is going to, in this case, change them to actual stitches, and I don't want that. Right? So I'm going to undo that. I'm not going to use the remove all for this. All right. So I can also reverse my stitching. So kind of sometimes playing with these buttons will get it into a flow that it's going to work. It's not really going to. And if I want to see what it's going to look like when the machine's stitching, I'm going to use the animated. So you can see how the blue line traces over where it starts and now where it's going to end, and then it would drag and then go do number 4. So that's kind of what that gives you. I can also do check for breaks, which will help highlight any of those areas where I showed you I had to snap those ends together a little bit, those two parts. So what I'm going to do now is I don't want it to stitch this one in between 5. I actually want this to be my beginning. So I'm going to make sure that this box is on 1, and I'm going to click on the yellow circle and I get a 1 here. All right. Now it hasn't totally fixed my problem because this is still showing as a red or a stop point. So I can click on that, and now I've made that a start point. Right? So I'm getting a little bit closer into creating the flow of how the machine can stitch this. Right? So that's 1. So it's switched my 2 to coming over here. Well, I don't want to stitch that next. I want to stitch this section next. So it's on 2 here. I click on the yellow dot. That turns that 2. So now that it's continuous, this whole section here is going to stitch together, right? So now my 3, I don't really want to be a 3. I want to move that to 2 again. Click on it. And now I've got the 2, right? And now I have the 3 and here. So it's getting closer. But do you see up here where I have the red and the green? So this is places where I need to go in my pattern in the other screen and kind of make those ends connect better. And I can't really do that here, but that's because I have my breaks checked here, all right? So I want to save this because I have fixed on how it's going to stitch this. And in this case, I'm going to override this one here and hit save. And just like anything that when you're saving a file, it will warn you that you're overwriting it. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to come back here. So let's zoom in and fix those 2 points where it looks like we've lost our continuousness. So we'll just kind of delete out some of these little excesses here. And sometimes I find it helpful to grab a node. I just have a little too much here, so I can just kind of get rid of some of the duplication. And now I can snap these 2 ends together. And so grabbing and moving them really kind of helps me get rid of some of that overlap and find it. So I'm just going to continue to fix this and snap these two together. All right, we'll fit this back. I'll do a quick save, and then I'm going to peek in my optimization here and see if that's kind of helped. And now you can see I have one smooth design. So if I wanted to place this on just a block, it's ready to go. Right? It's going to start and stop and it's done. But I want to turn this into a pantograph. So I'm going to hit cancel. And now what I'm going to do is, now that I've kind of made those adjustments, again, I can go to the preview. You can see I'm still not continuous, but you can see I'm pretty close, right? So I am going to go into that tool again, do the endpoint continuity, zoom out so I can see where there might be some issues. I can zoom in on those corners and see, do I need to add anything or can I just snap these together? Looks like if I snap them together, I'm gonna get kind of a point. I don't really want a point. Over on this side, move it over and see if I can add just a little bit more to my drawing. What I think I'm gonna do first is I'm just gonna cut some of these out and I'll go back to my draw and I'll kind of bring my nodes down a little bit. And let's just see if I can kind of get this a little bit closer to connected. And I kind of like that a little bit better, so I can, again, fit it, see how it's looking. And I don't mind the little loopy thing that's happening there. I'm okay with that. And so you can see that I have different start and stop points. So I'm going to zoom this in, and I've got this one here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to snap my ends. So what this is going to do is going to take my start point and my stop point and snap them together. And I have two choices. I can snap the vertical components of the points together. What that means is it's literally going to stitch from one end to the next. What I really want to do is I want this stop to connect to the next start, all right? So to do that, I hit the snap ends, and this time I'm going to hit the yes, and now that's going to create that continuous design. So my end point will then begin the start of the next one. Now we can take a look at the preview, and now you see it says that we are continuous. This line is not going to be here. It is just showing you how your start point for one is going to start at the end of the other one. And so now we can, play with those rows and how we want it to go, stagger it if we want to stagger it, and just kind of have some fun with the placement, right? So that's going to create the pantograph. And from this screen, I could go straight into quilting if I was connected, and this is where it will go through the process of having you set your safe area and all of that. So I'm not going to do that right now, but we'll go into the placement, and then you do all the things that you would want to do to place your pattern. And so now we're going to take a look at some of the other drawings that you can do with mirrors first. So I'm in the draw screen here, and you have like node spacing, and if you want something to be double-sided, the checkbox here. But you also have these quick mirrors. So I'm going to start with the horizontal, so you can see how I can mirror that. Let's try horizontal 2. So horizontal 2, you'll notice, has two lines. It's one long line, as you can see here, and one is darker and one is lighter. And I can start to draw, and you can see how it is mirroring on both sides. So it's also, because I had the button checked, it mirrored on this side. Because I have the horizontal 2 checked, it also mirrored on this side. We have vertical and horizontal. So again, you can see that I'm drawing on the side that has the darker line when I'm doing that, going back into the patterns. You can use splines and arcs. Go ahead and click this as a continuous line, and I can draw this. And so because I want it to mirror both sides, I get a double line here. I can go into the edit, and I can pull the one side, and you can see how I'm creating these different shapes as I'm kind of playing with it and trying to connect them. And of course, I can always do the nodes and snap the nodes together as I kind of finish the different mirrorings. So definitely play with all of the options that are available so that you can create, diagonals if you want. Just kind of see how that is coming up with stuff and how it just follows what you're doing on the other side. Let me clear this out. You can do, the matrices are kind of fun in that if I want to kind of select a pattern, maybe I use this leaf star here, I can kind of see how it would try to overlap to put all those things in there and create something fun and funky. And you can work with the sizing so that you can get more of a look that you want. Let's do some jumbos and see if we can get these to move. And just kind of maybe rotate. All these little same features are in here as you are playing with the mirrored types. All right, stagger. Again, if I want to draw my own thing, maybe I create some of those things, and you can see how it's now mirroring that same pattern in a staggered way along there. So you can really come up with some very creative things to do as you're doing mirroring. I really like the easy. So the easy shapes gives you opportunities to do mirroring with different types of shapes as well. And so flakes here, you can control how many branches you want in the mirroring. So again, you still have this darker line so that you know where it is that you want to draw and maybe what you want to add to that. I can kind of go in here, go to the draw, let me kind of do more swirly stuff. And it's just kind of fun because it's going to mirror that drawing and try to connect it on the other side. And once I've got kind of what I want, I go back to using those snap ends or snap selected to really smooth out the overall look of it. With the easy snowflakes, you can also control the branches. So maybe I want a 4 or I want an 8 in my drawing. I can do that. Maybe I just create an arc here that I like. Again, edit my 2 nodes, get control of that, and I can get some really neat overlaps. And I can then, click those 2 things, snap the selected, and really just kind of fix this pattern for later. You have polygons, so you can actually draw different shapes outside of just squares. If you want a square or rectangle, just use the draw, the continuous, let it do the 2 points, use the grid there so you can line that up. But this allows you to do equal distance shapes. You can really just kind of combine some really neat things. I have a friend that has a hexie quilt that they did this, and now you can connect all these together and create different hexies for your design. You can also mirror polys. So you can kind of set this up. Your dark line here is where you're going to draw, and you can do some drawings that kind of create and will mirror inside of that shape and create something like, in this case, kind of a wonky little star. So there's just so many options of what you can do with this software. We have spirals. It will generate spirals for you, and you can tell it how you want those spirals to be by the number, by your radius. If you want it to get a bigger center part, that would be the radius part. If you want that center to be smaller and kind of connect, you would click on these buttons, and you can go the other direction, and it really changes the look of the spirals as you play with it. Bow ditches and Hilberts, these are, interesting to play with. Instead of having 2 directions, you have 3 directions that you can mess with. And so it does take a lot of different ways to kind of play with what kind of looks you're going to get as you are clicking the buttons and seeing what you are controlling. So you are controlling across not just the X and the Y, but the angled as well. And then lastly in that, with the easy, we have the Hilberts. You can randomize and create density. Again, we're going to create a little bit of a drawing here along the dark part. Let me just undo that and kind of see what happens as you go around this. But you can change how many Hilberts that you have. You know, if I want to really create some funky shapes, I can increase the density of them and then go back into those drawings and just see like what develops from doing that. One other thing I want to show you, I kind of mentioned, was the background. Maybe you're not a great drawer, but maybe you can trace, right? So we're going to go to the background here and we're going to load an image. And I have an image that I found on the internet, and I can fade this out. I can grayscale it, and I just kind of have to keep hitting the fade until I get it to the lightness that I want. And now I can actually do some tracing. So I try to figure out maybe where I would want to start. I get my nodes together and just kind of trace it, make sure I'm on the continuous, you know, and just kind of follow the design the best that I can and really kind of come up with it. So I've actually already did this one, so I'm gonna just kind of clear this out completely. So you do have to go to background to get rid of that image. And it got rid of my grid, so I can click that back on to get my grid. And I'm just gonna load the couple of ones that I created from this. So I did a single. You can see that was from that particular design, which we could take a look at the optimize and fiddle with to get it to go in one smooth way when we go to stitch it. So that just kind of gives you an idea there. I did a double for that here, where I actually did some additional lines in between because I took one and I mirrored it. I flipped it over on the other side by copying it, mirrored that image a little bit, and now I could have something that stitches all the way across in a block where I have those two. I also did the blooms here, and I haven't added anything in between. So I actually have two separate things that are going to stitch out, number one and number two here, and I could flip-flop those and put it on a block or however I want to do it. So that just gives you an idea how you can take something and trace it and turn that tracing using some of those other features to get that continuousness and turn that into a quilt design. So if you're more comfortable drawing on paper maybe and then importing that into this feature, you can. And then just because I said I would kind of go a little bit more on how you would actually place this, is just a little bit of refresher. Let's say I want to place this design. I would go into quilt. It's going to ask me to save my design. Go ahead and just save over that because I'm good with it. And I am in simulation mode. If I was on the frame, I would actually move the machine to set the safe area, but since we're just doing this as a simulation, I'm just going to let it pick its numbers, and then I can choose how to set our placement. And basically we would use the needle, but since this is in simulation, I can just click wherever based on this and say, okay, I want it to be here, and I can move it, and then maybe I want the next movement to be over here, and so on and so forth. And then clicking on those nodes, get the shape that I want for that placement. I'm going to leave it a little wonky. Let's say it's a wonky block. And then do I want to stretch it to fill in that block? I can by clicking that there, or I can do the fit. I kind of like that stretch for the funky blocks, so I'm going to do that. I can flip it either way that I want it. I think I'll leave it the original way I had it. I can rotate and size, all these things we kind of looked at here. And then I just go into Quilt and go through that process of setting it up, and it's ready to go. Well, I think between the two videos, we've given you a great overview of how to use PatternCAD, so you should feel inspired to start creating your own stitching designs. In the next video, going over Pro features, we're going to look at the record feature, and I'm going to show you how you can draw out designs using that, either in simulation mode or directly on a quilt, and I'll do some real stitching for you to show you how it all works. In the meantime, if you have any questions about PatternCAD, feel free to reach out to our tech support at support@graceframe.com. Please join me for that next video, and until then, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.